Okay, I am delighted to be back here at the Gregorian University, my alma mater. I first came here some 66 years ago. 66 years ago, and I had as a teacher Father Paulo Detza, Bernard Lonergan, Juan Alfaro, and such a team of excellent scholars that I will never forget. I can't promise to remember everything they taught me, but I do my best. I do my best. And also, I came back 50 years ago at the time of Vatican II. And at that time, I was already emeritus and serving one of the American bishops, and then also the Secretary General of the World Union of Catholic Philosophical Societies. And it was a time when issues of philosophy and transformation were very much alive. So that was, in fact, a most enthusiastic assembly, and we had great hopes for the future. But unfortunately, the year 1968 lives in infamy, perhaps. It was a time of world revolution. It was a time when the processes of celebrating religion suddenly were moved aside in order to break through all of the senses of transcendence, the senses of obedience, the senses of religion. It was a time of total transformation. And so when people talk about 1968, they're talking about the time that the universities throughout the world were in revolution. Now, when we come back, we find also that we have a new challenge. The new challenge is that of the death of God, the processes of secularization, the processes of a change in the attitude towards religion. And a few years ago, 1999, I was giving a lecture in Tehran, perhaps the first non-Muslim, perhaps, to ever speak in that city. And as soon as I finished, there was a question from the floor, and one of the graduate students in religion stood up and said, "But you talk about freedom and a new sense of freedom, but isn't freedom that by which we disobey God?" And that was a great opportunity then to begin to speak about a new sense of freedom that was rather living out in a creative way the messages that we have from the divine. And so we come to this point here, and we find that the issue of freedom is, in fact, a great challenge now for religion. How can we understand freedom in a creative way How can we understand the new possibilities of religious dialogue in a way that makes it possible to bring the Word of God into the hearts and minds of people? And then we have another kind of question, and that is, what about the fact that the world is turning inside out, upside down? It's going somewhere, and we're having great difficulty in understanding what that direction is. We find ourselves for the first time ever in what we refer to as a global context. How does one work in a global context in a sense of fidelity and a sense of creativity to make this a new opportunity to bring the message of the gospel to all people? How can we do that? And at the same time be fully cognizant and fully respectful and fully creative with the experiences, the religious experiences that are had by people in all parts of the world. Never to miss an opportunity to respond to the knock of God on the door. That God has been knocking on the doors of mankind in so many different ways. Is it possible to bring those together in a great symphony, which will be polyphonic and which will be a new enrichment of the human sense of the divine? Can we do that? Do we have the creativity? Do we have the initiative? It is the opportunity that has never been present to the church in the past. But now it is. And how do we respond? That, it seems to me, is the issue that stands before us. It's the new, absolutely unique opportunity that we have that our ancestors have never had. Can we respond? How can we respond to that? Well, there are some keys, some great accomplishments that have been sought after and realized. We have, for instance, the work of Hans-Georg Gadamer, who after the Second World War renewed the sense of authority. Oh, this had been quite forgotten. It had been, in fact, quite rejected. And Hans-Georg Gadamer brought that to the fore, that authority can be, in fact, an essential element. And we have a volume from Hathrop with Tony Carroll as guide, who works on just that issue. We have also the work especially of Charles Taylor, and this includes the making of the self, and then beyond that, a secular age. Two great volumes, and accompanied by many associated studies that have spoken out and analyzed in depth the character of the secular age in which we live. Charles Taylor is with us today, and I think if I have this opportunity, I want especially to thank him for the great inspiration that he has brought to humankind, in the sense that it is possible to move ahead, and that it should be, secular age should be understood not as a loss, but as a new step forward. And we have also with us Jose Casanova, who single-handedly took on the fallacy that secularity was simply a loss of religion, and said, no, secularity is a new way of being religious. And he pointed us in the direction that would make that possible. And together, the two of them thought out what could be the pattern of the work that could lie ahead. And they said, there are 4 things that we need to study. One of them is that of the seekers. That is, not that they are against religion or abandoning religion, but they are looking in new ways. Can we meet them? Can we find out where they're going? Can we speak to them? This is a new creative mode of approaching the secular age. And then also the magisterium. How can the magisterium be, in fact, the guide and the teacher of the new seekers? How can that be done? This is the great challenge for the church. And I remember we had a special dialogue at Catholic University with Cardinal Francis George and Charles Taylor, hosted by Jose Casanova. And the Cardinal pointed out that some wanted to remain just as things were in the past, and others wanted to change. And the church had to speak to both of these. And they're not the only two, as the Cardinal Francis George pointed out. And so how do we speak positively, creatively to people who want to be living the faith in quite different ways? And perhaps, as was brought up, perhaps there's more than 2 ways. Perhaps there are many different ways in the world today in which people are seeking the divine and responding in their own way. Can we bring those together? Can this be the life of the church? A creative pastoral responsibility. And then the consideration as well of the changes of the times in which we live, and consequently the changes in the historical situation in which the faith is lived. And I think Pope Francis spoke to the theologians just about a week ago and said, don't simply give us directions from outside, but rather as theology is a way of living the faith and sublumine fide, it needs to be a living faith that we begin from as theologians. And so that element then of the moral directions and the historical circumstances is another special consideration. And finally, we have the plural spiritualities. The plural spiritualities that are different ways of responding to God. If we have a consideration, for instance, of unity, does the Chinese sense of harmony, can that be an enrichment? Can we speak to that? And if the consideration of the Islamic vision is one of compassion, then does our sense of love speak to that? And does that speak to us? Or can we say that perhaps if we started out of our total sense of unity and saw that as being enriched by the Chinese sense of harmony, that the two of them might be able to speak to love in a way that would open to compassion. And then we would have a dialogue of religions, but one that is continually enriching. So these are the hopes that might be sought and that might be tested and might be then examined. Can this interchange, this meeting of religions, be one that enables the church to bring its message of the gospel to all people? And can do that precisely because it is being continually enriched by the century-long experiences of our peoples in all parts of the world. This is the great opportunity for the future. I think my time at the Gregorian, this may be the last time after 66 years. But when I look around and I see the hopes that we have here in this hall, I rejoice then that the task will be in good hands. Thank you very much for coming and for your work.